This is the Masters of PPC. My name is Fred Vallaeys. I'm your host, and I'm here in studio today with Kirk Williams from Zato Marketing. Welcome, Kirk.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be here.
So, Zato, what does that name stand for?
Well, I did some Greek in college, so it's actually kind of a rip-off of the word zeteo, which is to search, to seek.
Oh, nice.
In ancient Greek.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you've been blogging recently about a couple of things I found really interesting. One of them was agency pricing models. And you've got a pretty unique take on that. So tell us a little bit about the different models you see and what you believe in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's just me at my agency, so I think that...
So you're a consultant.
Yeah, basically a consultant. And I think because of that, it just really intrigues me, right? Because if you can figure out how to do pricing really well, then you're doing better for your own agency. So
the typical problem, I suppose, for a consultant is that how much money you make is limited by the number of hours in your day. And if you have like an hourly pricing model, that's exactly the problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I've presented before and gone over a few of them. I know hourly is kind of a popular one. I personally really don't like it. I think the one big thing that hourly does really well is help prevent scope creep. Which is basically clients continually giving you more and more things to do, and you need some way to be able to make sure you're getting reimbursed for that, you're getting paid right. So hourly does that well.
When you do hourly, like what's a reasonable expectation? That can you charge what a plumber charges? Do you charge what you get out of McDonald's? Obviously more than what you get out of McDonald's, right? This is a much more expert skill.
Yeah, and that's part of it. And there can even be a difference between what you think and even what the market bears for what you think is a proper PPC hourly rate, and maybe what someone is used to if they hear hourly rate.
And even city by city. So I mean, I live in the Bay Area. Things here are just horrendously expensive. We just had someone come into the studio with an Uber, and 17-minute ride was $90.
Oh wow.
Right, so it's like, that same Uber ride last week when I was in Florida, that cost me about $20.
Yeah. So to me, one of the biggest negatives I have against hourly is I think that it has the potential to discourage you to grow in your skills as well, because to me, a big part of growing in your skills is actually learning how to do things well, and that usually means you do them faster. So I think there's a concern there as well. If I'm learning to do it better and I'm getting faster at it, then I'm kind of hurting myself for doing the exact same thing.
Because you still add the same value to the client, you just get less money for it.
Yeah.
So I guess that then goes to the next one, which is more of an a la carte. If I'm going to add new keywords for you on a weekly basis, if I'm going to manage your bids once a day, sort of pick and choose. Does that model work at all?
It can. To me, that has a little bit of a complicated factor. So to me, another big part of pricing is also like the client aspect of it, right? Because there's two people involved in pricing, right? And we forget that. We like to make it all about us as the agency. So to me, a potential negative of that is that you're constantly having a back and forth with the client, like negotiating and that. And I don't know, I think that can have a little bit of a negative effect if they just always feel like you're trying to get money out of them.
I mean, it's kind of like the airlines, right? When it was, here's how much it costs to fly to New York. Okay, well, that was the price. And now it's like, well, you get the seat for this much, but you get a window seat for this much more if you want to eat something. And that whole a la carte just gives people a bad feeling.
Yeah, it can. I know some people like it, but I think kind of those concerns are there.
And then I would also assume from the agency side, it just provides less reliability in terms of how steady your income is. Whereas a consultant, right? Because people might say, well, hey, this month don't do the keyword thing because I want to save a little bit of money there.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
So what's the pricing model that you like the best?
Actually, I was just talking to someone about this, and they brought up a good point that kind of changed my mind about a model. But right now, I'm kind of doing it's like a combination between flat rate and percentage of spend. So I'll work off of client spend, having a level of an idea of how much work it takes to do for this account at this price range and that kind of thing.
And is that sort of because like you figure an account that spends $50,000 generally has X number of keywords, whereas an account that spends twice as much maybe double the size, double the work?
Yeah, I think that's fair. They're, usually, and not always, right? And so that,
Yeah, I've seen accounts spend a ton of money and they have like 300 keywords, so it's...
Exactly, and that's probably a good weakness of percentage of spend. And one of the things I went over in my discussion when I was talking about this in my session was that there is no perfect model, you know? And so I think the negative of that could be, if you have a legal client in Dallas, spending $20,000 a month, and yeah, exactly. And if you have maybe an e-commerce company with real cheap CPC spending $20,000, that's a big difference between how much work is going into that. And so that's where, so at least to me at this point in my agency life, especially because I really do mostly like SMBs, I think I'm happy with this model. I've talked to a few people at like bigger agencies recently that really like flat rate, and that's been intriguing to me. Because they're looking at a little bit more like that and kind of setting that rate. So I don't know. Yeah, you keep growing and learning,
Exactly. So it's got to be something that works for you and that works for the client.
Yes.
And basically, like if they'll buy it at that price, then hopefully it affords you to be a living the way that you want to live, and that's the two people involved, right?
Yeah.
Now you say you work with SMBs, so do you ever find like certain businesses are just too small for a consultant, and does it then work? Is it a good idea for them to get some sort of an agency that's maybe more on the cookie cutter side, or should people just manage this themselves?
Yeah, in terms of managing themselves, sometimes when you're smaller, it's tough. Like I fully realize that for SMBs, especially now as things are getting, they're getting a little pricier. Agency fees are more expensive. CPCs have risen over the years. It's definitely more difficult, and in some ways the tough part of that is it's almost more important because of that, right? Because there's more at stake.
Right.
So definitely, and as things have gotten more complicated, definitely a business owner, probably they're just not going to have the time to be able to learn and do AdWords well.
They'll never have the expertise. But do you find there's kind of like the right type of small business owner? Because I've had conversations and, okay, well, fine, you're spending $1,000 a month on AdWords, so clearly you're not going to spend $1,000 on a consultant unless you were hoping to grow that business to $20,000 a monthly spend. But that's an ambitious small business owner who really sees PPC as that next channel of growth versus someone who's like, well, we're happy with the level we're at, we just don't want to shrink. Do you see any trends in that, like types of businesses that really work well for consultants?
I think so. I think that cost does have a level in it. I do know that some bigger agencies won't even accept clients under a certain range. So I do think spend is part of it. They're going to have to look at what their market is as well, and like if is traffic volume there. It could be that someone wants to get into PPC. I was just talking to a guy actually today about this, and they had this new product that they almost kind of invented that was like, it was like meeting a need that people don't really know about yet.
Yeah, so they're not searching
so there's not really search volume for that, even if it's an awesome product. Right. So that might be an example of, where it's good to try other things, and I think especially as you can get that market to grow, working into AdWords in the future, I've encouraged some. SMB PPC, to me, one of the biggest things is you do need to invest what is needed to make it work. Because the other concern, I think, is that people can say, well, I'll just try. I'll throw $300 a month at it, and especially if in your market that is not going to give you a prayer, then it's not worth it to do that. So maybe work on building it out and then invest in AdWords.
And for you as a consultant, if you get $300 of spend going through the system, there's probably not very much data that you can use to actually optimize, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good point.
Good. Now you do a lot of work in shopping ads and PLAs. What's new and interesting in that space? Let's maybe talk a little bit about the sidebar ads going away, and all of a sudden all this space is now just for PLAs.
Yeah.
What do you think that's going to do?
Yeah, I in terms of PLAs, I absolutely love it. And even not in terms of PLAs, I've been keeping an eye on things, and it hasn't really affected my clients much. But PLAs, because really, what is it? Knowledge Graph and shopping now are about the only things that'll show on the right-hand side. And let's see, Aaron Levy wrote an article. I think Matt Lawson from Google just wrote an article on Search Engine Land, and they both reference data from their client group that shows how PLAs on the right side tend to actually do better. So it could be that that's...
Also, the PLA on the right side does better than the PLA at the top of the page?
That's what they're saying. And Aaron Levy...
So it's the opposite of what happens on
with
text
search.
Is
It's the exact opposite. And Aaron had a good observation about that, and he was saying it's kind of that comparison shopping engine thing where people are a little bit more interested in comparing and thinking through. They're not just like see, click. And for whatever reason, because of that, the right side tends to do better at that because shopping is a comparison shopping engine.
What kind of click behavior do you see on PLAs? I've heard stories of people just rapidly clicking all 8 links so the pages pop open and then they start comparison shopping.
Yeah, that definitely happens. I mean, you can definitely see, Google Analytics has kind of the attribution, and sometimes you'll see the crazy, stop clicking on my ad 50 times, So that's there as well, but that's comparison shopping, so.
Now, you also had an interesting blog post, I think it was on Search Engine Land, where one of the queries that your PLA ads were showing for was the word M.
The letter
M actually isn't even a word.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about what happened there.
I have no idea.
What do you think? I mean, so Google was obviously matching some products to the letter M.
Yeah. So
not great. What did you do about it?
Well, part of and what that blog post is about is basically setting up your shopping campaigns in like a query targeting thing, right? Because shopping is product bidding, which is great in its own regard. But then, if someone bids on your high heel, if someone bids for shoe, or if they bid on, I want to buy the most expensive high heel shoe you have right now, I have cash, right? You're kind of forced to bid that same level of bid for both of those.
Right.
So there's kind of this really cool way, and Martin in Germany, Blue Fusion, I think, is the company.
Martin
Rotgerdinger, yeah, thank you.
I'm not German, so I probably still butchered that.
Yeah, sorry, Martin, But he kind of released this video a year and a half ago or so at Marketing Festival, where he discussed this strategy where he employs 4 essential aspects of shopping campaigns. Campaign priority, negative keywords, shared budgets, and your bidding. And basically doing those things together, you can separate query groupings by intent, and therefore you can bid on that intent, which is awesome.
Right.
So that's one of those things. So the letter M, I excluded it.
Right.
But
and I think in Martin's example, it was like 3 parallel campaigns that have different levels of, the CPC got increasingly higher, but the campaign priority at the same time got lower. So the highest bids were on the lowest priority campaign. But you don't have to do 3 campaigns, right? You can simplify it.
Yeah, I've done 2, especially, I actually just presented at this at SMX, and one of the things I said was, you have to be you. You have to figure out what works for your client. And a real small client where people aren't searching for the SKU, maybe they don't know the SKU, then non-brand brand SKU is not really going to work for you. So be creative,
right.
But I think it's about identifying those query groupings by intent or profitability or that, and separating those and bidding.
So do you then typically start from looking at the query reports first and then figuring out what the groupings are, or do you pretty much follow the Martin's formula, where it's more like very specific brand search to more generic?
I think usually like the no brand thing does work pretty well, because a lot of times, and you hear people talk about that, in their data, a lot of times brand queries convert better.
Yep.
So that usually is a good place to start. But sometimes it's not that way, and so you do have to get a little more creative. One example I've used is still using the 3 system and using brand as kind of that last one, but also just straight up using non-converting queries or converting queries in 2 separate campaigns. So running everything through that top campaign. If you start to see some queries are not converting, exclude them so they go to a lower level and then bid a little bit lower.
So it's basically like an alpha beta or a pick and steal type?
Yeah, maybe similar to that.
It's not pick and steal. What is it called again? Stick and peel.
Okay.
Stick and peel, yeah. So cool, and you can do that for PLAs. That's
there you go.
Pretty unique.
Yeah, just find out what works. You know, be creative. There's probably a million ways to think about how to separate by query intent that I've not thought of.
Is there anything else in shopping that you wish more people did to get better results, or anything new that you think is exciting?
Yeah, not my competitors. You guys,
well, that's okay. So we won't go there.
You guys can, just do the all campaign, all product thing. No, I'm really excited about shopping RLSAs. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're basically taking shopping, which is awesome, and then remarketing, which is awesome, and bringing those two together. You can.
So,
really
what kind of remarketing can you apply to this? Can you do the customer match on this? Or is it limited to people who've been to your website?
Good question on the customer match.
I've actually not seen the customer match. I know it's for YouTube, Gmail, and search ads, but I don't know if PLAs are considered search ads.
That's a good question, because I haven't. I can't do customer match for all my clients because if they don't have a big enough list.
Right,
so I'm trying to remember if that's a good question. I'm not sure.
And then do you do like the dynamic remarketing where the product automatically gets inserted based on how deep the person went on your site?
I'm trying that. I'm definitely not a pro at that, but I'm intrigued by it. So I know some people who really like it. Elizabeth Marsden has talked about it. Andrew Bethel on PPC chat, and they both love it.
Yeah. And actually, you're pretty involved on Twitter.
Yeah.
PPC Kirk. So it's kind of those weird things. Actually, like in our industry, everybody's on Twitter.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea why that is?
I don't. I know it works well because we can communicate and discuss things and keep it on like that. We do PPC chat, the hashtag a lot.
So tell us about PPC chat. When should people tune in to Twitter?
Yeah,
to have those discussions.
Yeah, it is every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So I have to do the math in my head. It's 10 a.m. for me.
Okay.
Yeah, but 12 p.m. Eastern time, and we just discuss. Matt Umbro does a great job with it, and we just discuss all things PPC. Really, it's a good time. I've learned tons, especially being alone. I don't have coworkers that I can ask questions to. So I've really found a lot of value in the community.
Yeah. Any other great resources out there that you typically go to? I know you write for, is it PPC Hero, Search Engine Land you've written for? Search Engine
Land, yeah, I guess kind of all the main kind of PPC blogs people would know about, WordStream, Optimizer, PPC Hero, the AdWords,
thank you for
Blogspot. The AdWords, Inside AdWords, and the AdWords community, and that are always good ones.
Actually, one that I like is the technical blogs for the API, the Ads API. Because you'll typically find out before anywhere else that, they just added this new field in this random column in a report. And you're like, what could that be? And
that's
a couple weeks later, it shows up in the front end.
I heard that, so I opted into that, and I kept getting emails of all this really complicated stuff. And I was like,
exactly.
Oh well. And so I unsubscribed.
Okay. I'll tweet about
I'll let you guys tweet about it.
Cool.
You and Ginny Marvin.
Well, thanks for joining us in the studio. So this has been another episode of the Masters of PPC with Kirk Williams from Zato Marketing. Check out his website if you need some help. Also follow him on Twitter. And if you've liked this episode, subscribe and we'll have another one for you next week.